All right, I hope everybody can see my screen. Somebody who's not muted, holler if you can't. I wanted to talk about, I'm sorry I'm not doing a video introduction. I'm actually laid up in bed with a broken ankle, and it wasn't a very flattering angle for me, so I'm skipping that part. But I'd like to talk about how my own team has used experiments. I think I need to get rid of this panel. Why won't it go away? Has used retrospectives and experiments to improve. And our team made a transition to Agile back in 2003. And we do Scrum, we've done incorporated XP practices, we've incorporated Lean and Kanban practices. So we're always using retrospectives to identify issues or problems or where we want to improve. And think of little experiments, as Linda Rising likes to call them, small experiments, to see, can we make a difference with a problem, or can we improve in this area? And there's lots of material on how to do a good retrospective, a useful retrospective. There's the Norm Kurth Prime Directive for retrospectives. Linda Rising and Mary Lynn Mann's, or no, they're not the ones with the Agile retrospectives. There's an Agile retrospectives book, anyway, I think from Diana Larson and Esther Derby. And so you can get lots of good ideas on different ways to do retrospectives. But you especially need a feeling of safety. Everyone needs to feel free to bring up issues. Everyone needs to feel that they won't be blamed, that there won't be finger pointing. So how does my team solve issues? Well, we're all about trying to make things visible. If we have a problem, we want to get it out front where everybody can see that problem and see how much it might be costing us in terms of time or resources or frustration. And we like to experiment rather than analyze something to death, thinking, oh gosh, could we make this better? Or rather than think, how did this happen? What was the cause of this problem? We do some of that, but sometimes it's hard to know the cause. It's sometimes something that just puzzles us. And so we just like to think of a way that we might address that, something we can try to do. And then we look at the next retrospective, we look back and see if it helped. And I'd like to share two examples from our team. I have a picture here of our team in a meeting, and you can see our product owner drawing on the whiteboard, because we like to have examples on the whiteboard. We like things to be visible. That's something that we learned through some of the experiments that came out of our retrospectives. You can also see in the middle of the screen here, there's a laptop. I don't know how well you can see it, it's a small picture, but there's a laptop here with somebody's picture on it. And that's our virtual telepresence device. That's our remote team member who lives in India, and so that's how he participates in our meetings. So by making him visible, we're able to communicate better with him. So that's some other examples of what we've done. All right, come on, there we go. So the first example that I want to give you is a problem that we brought up about a little more than 6 months ago. We use FitNess. FitNess is a tool that lets you specify test cases through a wiki in markup language, a wiki markup language, and you automate those tests with a fixture written in whatever code your production code is written in our case Java. And so the testers write test cases on the wiki, and the programmers automate those tests, because programmers are really good at automating tests. It's just like writing production code, and it's very efficient that way. The FitNess wiki, we chose FitNess because we like the way that it made the test visible even to our business users, and it allows a lot of narrative and comments, and you can design the test to be easy to read even if you're not a programmer. However, a wiki is really a terrible way to create and edit tests. Even if you're not writing test code, you're still specifying tests. And the wiki markup is just clumsy for that purpose. And what ended up happening is, this is back in 2004 that we started with FitNess, and we created quite a lot of fitness tests, but we did not, we meaning mostly I, did not follow really good practices of keeping duplication out of the tests, keeping them easy to maintain, and it was hard to refactor them if we had to use this wiki. It doesn't have a good search feature. It doesn't have any search replace feature. I think it might now, but it didn't back then. And it has its own history, but it doesn't work very well, and we would lose the history of changes. And so, for example, a test might be turned off, and you look and say, well, I wonder why that test is turned off. Whoa, it doesn't work. Well, why did somebody just turn that test off? Why didn't they fix it? Because it wasn't checked into source code control. We didn't have any check-in comments to give us an idea of what was the history of the changes on that test, and that was a problem. And so I brought that up at a retrospective. And so one of the ideas that we had was to go ahead and just put our fitness tests under our source code control, which is Subversion. So this was just an experiment that we decided to do. And so we with help from a system administrator and another programmer, we were able to check our fitness tests in, and of course there are problems, like because fitness is trying to keep its own history, it creates a lot of extra files that it creates as zip files. We don't want to check those into source control, so we had to learn how to tell Subversion to ignore those. We had to sort of trick Subversion with a soft link to tell it where the source code was, so that when we work on these text files inside Subversion, and then we bring up the browser to look at the test through the fitness wiki, we're looking at the same code. And we get lots of benefits from this. We have check-in comments now, so when a test changes, we have to put a comment, and we can go back and see the history of the changes. We also have the benefits of the IDE. Obviously, we're using an IntelliJ IDEA. It does not have a fitness plugin that makes it particularly helpful to edit fitness tests like you would Java or Ruby or XML. Nevertheless, it does provide search and replace across the whole path that you can, if you need to do a global change, that's a lot easier to do. And fitness tests a lot of times are in columns, and so column mode editing can be very handy. So we found a lot of advantages to editing this way, and it's made our refactoring much easier. So we've been able to really improve our fitness tests, make them more maintainable with a lot less effort. So who did this? Well, our whole team really participates in every experiment that we do. This is a recent picture of my team, and I just thought it was so cute, I decided to share it with you. But again, so, the testers, a system administrator, and some programmers all helped us in this process. Everybody had to get involved to make this successful. And that's what the whole team approach does. You have a lot of different skill sets, even in a cross-functional team where everybody's doing every task and people wear a lot of different hats. You still have people with different expertise. The programmers are really good at writing code. The system administrator is really good at administering the build machine, although we all can do that. So we all learn from each other, we all help each other. And then the second problem I want to talk about is we had a problem with getting our specifications from our product owner late. Our product owner used to give us nice story checklists with all the information and mock-ups and all the requirements and high-level test cases we needed for each user story. But he's a very busy person, and he began to get overwhelmed, and things backed up. The other business people didn't get their information to the product owner, so he couldn't give it to us. And it started slowly. He'd say, well, I'll get this story checklist to you, by the second day of the sprint. Don't worry. Well, then pretty soon it was by the third or fourth day of the sprint, and pretty soon it wasn't just one user story that was late. It was several user stories that were late. And so in our task board, we have a blocker column, and this blocker column, we have one row per user story here, and there were times we'd look at our board and every story would be blocked because we were waiting on something from the product owner or one of the other stakeholders, and this was really causing us a lot of distress. So what can we do about this? We decided to experiment. We've been using a tool called Mercury app to track our feelings about how our sprint is going. So every day we log our feelings about how do we feel that day about our sprint. And Mercury app lets you use a 1 to 5 scale, and we chose the panda scale. So if you're feeling really good about the sprint, you might put a happy panda, or if you're really upset about something because you have lots of stories blocked, you would put a sad panda. So we borrowed this idea from Mercury app, and we put it up on our whiteboard where we document all of our user stories. And so if we didn't feel like we had good requirements, we put a sad panda. If we felt like we knew everything we needed to do to get started on that story, we put a happy panda. So there's a picture of our board with with the pandas and some notes. For example, we have a lot of assumptions over here, and our assumptions may or may not be right. So we needed a lot more information. We also told our product owner that any stories for which we didn't have enough information to get started that had blocker cards, we would drop those stories from the sprint if we didn't have the information by the second day of the sprint. Well, this really had an effect on the product owner, realizing that his stories would not be carried forward if we didn't get the information. So he pushed back on the business people to get the information that he needed. We didn't give him a time, we just said the second day of the sprint. And so some of them weren't to us until 11:30 p.m. on the second day of the sprint, but we still got them. And we didn't give him a more clear requirement than that. So technically he got it done. And we reviewed this at the next retrospective, went over our happy and sad pandas and said, how do we feel about it now? And we really feel like this process helped us a lot. Both of our ideas helped us a lot. We've been getting far fewer blocker cards on our board, and we've also been able to push the customers to let us do simpler solutions to their problems. And as a result, we get more done. This stack of index cards is from last sprint before last, and it's about 3 times as much work as we usually get done, because we got the information we needed in a timely manner, and as a result, we were able to propose simpler solutions and get buy off on that. So I recommend trying this yourself. Don't just think about the facts of what happened. Think about your feelings. How do you feel about it? How did it make you feel? And don't get stuck in your root cause analysis. Don't get analysis paralysis. Just try an experiment and get everybody on the team thinking about it. You have all kinds of different skill sets on your team. Get everybody involved. And then revisit at your next retrospective. How did this work? Sometimes the experiments don't work, so you try something else. So I'd like to thank mercuryapp.com for letting us borrow their happy and sad panda idea. And again, I recommend the book Agile Retrospectives. There's a lot of other good material out there on retrospectives. So I would like to open that up for questions.